So with no further delay, we will be going further on with our meditation symposium. So today's moderator is Professor Bindu M. Kutty, who is a professor of neurophysiology and officer in charge of Center of Consciousness Study, Department of Neurophysiology, NIMHANS, Bangalore. Let me just introduce Madam briefly. Madam has had more than 24 years of teaching and research in neurophysiology. Her research interests include understanding the neural basis of meditation, cognition, sleep and consciousness, and the role of cerebellum in learning and memory. She has been awarded multiple honors. She is a member of the National Science Academy, India. She is the adjunct professor of Consciousness Studies, National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. She is a member of the editorial board, Neurobiology of Learning and Memory, International Journal of Clinical and Experimental Physiology, professor of AS Paintal Award and Deshpande Award of ASSOPI. She is the teaching faculty of the National Sleep Medicine course. She is a member of the Indian Sleep Medicine Board since 2012. She is a life member of APPI, ASSOPI, and IAN, and also the Member Association of Scientific Studies on Consciousness. Ma'am, we are very honored to have you here, and I would hand over the session to Dr. Bindu Kutty.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and I will...
What should I do? Thank you so much, and welcome to this meditation symposium. Without wasting much time, I will just directly enter into this symposium now. In this symposium, we have 3 eminent speakers, and this symposium is followed by a keynote address, which I am only chairing. So let us start with the first symposium speaker, Professor Ravindra Pant. I will just introduce you to Professor Ravindra Pant. Professor Ravindra Pant is a world-renowned teacher, philosopher of Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist studies. He has traveled widely across the world and has provided more than 100 lectures on Buddhist philosophy and Buddha studies. He is the former Director Vice Chancellor of Navanalanda Mahavihara, that is deemed to be university under the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. He has also functioned as a Director of Vipassana Research Institute, that is the world headquarters of Vipassana meditation, for almost 14 years. Now, currently, he is the visiting professor of Buddhist studies at Gautama Buddha University at Noida, and also visiting professor of Buddhist studies at Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, New Delhi, under Ministry of Culture, Government of India. And he has been bestowed with many laurels, many honors and awards. I will just mention 1 or 2 here. He has been awarded the title of Mahasadama Jyotik Kadja. This is from the Union of Myanmar. For this prestigious title has been conferred to him in recognition of his contribution to Buddha's teaching. He was also awarded with the Lifetime Achievement Award at the International Festival of Buddhist Heritage of Ladakh for his involvement in the promotion and preservation of Ladakh's rich cultural heritage. And Buddhism Today Award for Leadership Excellence from Vietnam. Over to you, sir. It is our privilege to have you here today and we invite you to deliver the talk Relevance of Vipassana Meditation. Over to you, sir. Professor Ravindra Pant.
Thank you, Professor Bindu Kutty. Am I audible to you? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Honorable Chairperson, moderator of the session, Dr. Bindu Kutty, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a moment of joy to participate in this international virtual conference, YANTRA 2020 at NIMHANS, Bangalore. I am thankful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak on the topic relevance of Vipassana meditation. Friends, the present era of scientific and technological advancement has resulted, for sure, into the so-called material advancement. However, this scientific and technological advancement has failed to alleviate the basic suffering like poverty, inequality, regionalism, communalism, etc., that very much provides the fertile ground for the growth of fundamentalism, violence, and conflict throughout the world. There is no empirical evidence to support the assumption that social and economic progress based on a materialistic conception of life can ensure peace, happiness, and well-being of the humanity. Moreover, the present crisis of COVID pandemic has created an environment of constant fear and uncertainty of life. In such a conflicting scenario, to bring peace, happiness, and harmony with us in the environment around us is of utmost importance. And so the attention must shift to issues that help in making human a humane. It is this that makes the practice of Vipassana meditation more and more relevant as it encompasses the very philosophy of life completely missing in the postmodern era of development. Friends, it is a fact that human beings in the 21st century are passing through a very critical phase of time where there is more enmity, conflict, crisis, and destruction in almost every field and is visible even in the ecological sphere. One of the major cause of this human lust is the human lust and desire for material wealth, power, pleasure, that the solution to the major problems, social, economic, political, and ecological, which the world is facing in particular, is because of the degradation of the crash of our moral edifice. This is what is the practice of Vipassana meditation makes us experience and becomes the practical aspect of Dhamma preached by the Buddha. Before I talk about the relevance of the Vipassana meditation, I will briefly discuss about the term Vipassana and the practice as discussed by the Buddha. The word Vipassana is a Pali term. I would like to mention here that Pali was the lingua franca of the 6th century BC of the time of Buddha. So his original discourses are all in Pali language. And, in between my presentation, I'll speak Pali also, words of the Buddha, so that you can feel the language. The word Vipassana is a Pali term and has a distinct meaning. Etymologically, the term is derived from the verb passa, in Sanskrit pasya, which means to see, with vi as a prefix, which means visesena, with spatial manner, or vividhena, with different angles, or vichayena, disintegrating it. Thus, in Pali literature, we do find expression as panyatting thapetva visesena passatiti vipassana. Vipassana is observation of reality in a spatial way, in a correct way, by disintegrating the apparent truth. Thus, Vipassana means to see things as it is and not as it appears. Vipassana is best rendered in English as insight or panya, full wisdom, full knowledge, and yatha bhuta yana dassana, clear knowledge and vision, or knowledge and vision as it is, are the terms generally used to define Vipassana. A full description of the term is frequently given in the suttas and in the Abhidhamma Pitaka. The term is particularly applied to the full knowledge acquired by discerning three characteristics, the lakhana, of the phenomenal world, namely impermanence, anitya, suffering, dukkha, substancelessness, anatta. Therefore, Vipassana can best be rendered in English as insight, to see things as they really are. in their true perspective, in their true nature. It is, in true sense, a practical technique of self-examination, a scientific method of self-observation that results in the total purification of mental impurities and the realization of highest happiness of full liberation. Friends, in the first sermon of the Buddha, which is known as Dhamma Chakra Pavattana Sutta, or the turning the wheel of Dharma at Sarnath, the Buddha taught that seekers of truth must avoid two extremes, that of the path of sensual pleasure on one side and that of extreme penance or austerity on the other side. This middle path of the Buddha, explained by means of Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path as the method of self-enlightenment, is the goal of Buddhist doctrine and is called as Dhamma. In this discourse, as a research scientist, the Buddha revealed his intricate study of suffering mind. First, he identified the malady, existence is suffering, dukkha. Then, analyzing it systematically, he realized that the cause of this malady of suffering is craving, trishna or tanha. Going further, he understood that if craving ceases, suffering will automatically cease. Therefore, craving must be eradicated by following the eightfold path, of which is nothing but sila, morality, samadhi, concentration, and panya or pragya, insight, referred to in Tipitaka as threefold training, Tibida Sikha. These three divisions in their most highly developed form constitute the Noble Eightfold Path, the interrelation of which is discussed in detail in Chulla Vedalla Sutta of the Tipitaka. The three principles, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, comprise sila or morality, which is the basis of the practice of vipassana. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, which forms samadhi, which helps in the one-pointedness of the mind, of the consciousness, and right view and right intention is wisdom or pragya. The practical aspect of it is the practice of vipassana meditation. This shows that the Buddhist system of training oneself from the beginning to end is consistent with Noble Eightfold Path leading to vimutti or final release. This is the system which Buddha himself discovered and achieved the perfect enlightenment and thereafter revealed to the Buddha. In Digha Nikaya, the Buddha says, I quote in Pali, Sila Samadhi Panyacha Vimutticha Anuttara Anubuddha ime dhamma gotamena yasassina iti buddho abhinyaya dhammakaahasi vikkunang dukkhasantakaro sattha chakhuma parinibbuto. Buddha says, virtue, sila, and samadhi, concentration, wisdom, panya, the supreme release by the famous Gautam, these things were understood with experience. Thus, finally comprehending them, the Buddha, ender of ill, completely cessation of the suffering, a teacher of insight, he indefinitely peaceful taught the Dhamma to the monks. Friends, it is on this system that the theory of Buddhist meditation is based, and its practice has been developed into twofold, samatha and vipassana. Samatha meditation consists in achieving the utmost one-pointedness of moral consciousness upon a given subject. Very often, it is the inhalation and the exhalation of breath, which we call in Pali as anapanasati. Sati means awareness, anapana means inhalation and exhalation. So, breathing awareness, awareness to respiration. The process of purifying the mind is done with the practice of vipassana or insight meditation. This leads to mental purity required for full knowledge. And this purity, being the proximate cause, induces clear comprehension, inner light, and clear vision. This vision, being supported by the two principles of right intention and right view, tends to produce that insight which penetrates into the reality of all phenomenal existence. The development of this insight, or the awareness of the essence of things observed, is called vipassana bhavana and leads to full knowledge. The technique of vipassana meditation is clearly and methodically discussed by the Buddha in the discourse called as Mahasatipatthana Sutta of the Nikaya. Having discussed about the vipassana meditation, let us talk on the relevance of vipassana. In today's chaotic world, we find the vibrations of negativity, anger, hatred, ill will, animosity, ego, etc. in the atmosphere around us. This pollution, although invisible, causes so much distress and problems in human society, like tension, stress, strain, conflicts, and several types of psychosomatic disorders. This results in nothing but misery. Vipassana is the way out of the suffering. In true sense, a technique to purify the mind. With a pure mind, one is able to easily overcome the darkness of ignorance and negativity. It brings total well-being to the person who practices it and provides a secure, happy, peaceful, and harmonious living. In today's perspective, Vipassana meditation is also becoming widely popular as a tool to conventional medical therapies. There is great relevance of Buddhist meditation on a modern day medical diseases, its prevention, cure, and reduction. Medical science says that in today's world, more than 60% diseases are of psychosomatic origin. Although they are real diseases that manifest in the body and mind, but mind plays a significant role in disease onset and progression. There is a lot of research supporting the idea that meditation helps the curing of disease like peptic ulcer, hypertension, high blood pressure, migraine, improves effects of asthma, arthritis, improve immune functioning, minimizing negative side effects of medications, etc. Clinical effects of meditation impact a broad spectrum of physical and psychological symptoms and syndromes, including reduced anxiety, pain, and depression, enhanced mood and self-esteem, and decreases stress. Recent studies and research has shown that Vipassana meditation can positively influence the experience of chronic illness and can serve as a primary, secondary, and or tertiary prevention strategy. Health professionals demonstrate commitment to holistic practice by asking patients about use of meditation and can encourage this self-care activity. Techniques of Vipassana of mindfulness can be taught in the clinical setting. Living mindfully with chronic illness has benefited the patient and is a fruitful area for research. And it can be predicted that evidence will grow to support the role of consciousness in human experience of disease. In the mind-body environment connection theory of disease, the mind is only part of the equation. The medical profession readily acknowledges that stress is a major factor in many diseases, heart diseases amongst them, and stress reduction is now a big business targeting everyone in the society, whether a common person or a busy executive or the youths or even the schoolgoers and many others. Samatha meditation is known stress reducer, so it should be no surprise that meditation can certainly help reduce the symptoms of many of the complaints. Mindfulness of the body is also a major help in alleviating the stress induced systems of major problems and can definitely prevent arising of these diseases. Meditation meditates communication between the mind and the body by bridging the gap between them, which is not as large as some may think. Meditation can help cultivate serenity, allowing the mind to regulate the body's reactions to stress. It thus assists in the reduction of stress, which can help reduce the likelihood of developing disease. Meditation stress reducing effect can also lessen the intensity of pain and accompanies disease by helping us better handle the symptom and know how and when to apply other forms of treatments. To conclude, I may say that everyone aspires for peace, happiness, and harmony, but more so the human beings. To a great extent, human performance depends on mental peace and harmony. In true sense, peace comes not from the absence of conflict in life, but from the ability to cope with it. Vipassana helps in achieving this. The best advantage in the practice of Vipassana meditation is that one finds that even before the eradication of the ultimate suffering, one experiences many benefits. One learns how not to react to the symptoms of suffering, which include the physical and the mental discomforts of mundane world amongst the human beings. These discomforts are the main source of suffering, creating psychic and psychosomatic disorders in the present day society, thereby curtailing the human performance. Friends, the Buddha was a master physician. In Pali, Mahabhisakko. The acts of sustained meditative practice that he prescribed had a calming effect on the mind and body due to their ability to synchronize brain activity. That is why he did prescribe Vipassana meditation as a remedy for the universal disease of suffering, dukkha. Thank you. Over to you, Binduji.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for that lucid presentation. We will take up at least 1 or 2 questions now. And then we can move on to the next speaker, but you be online. At last,
I'm
taking up some more questions.
Definitely, I'll be there online.
One question is that why does Vipassana not have aspects like asanas and pranayama? Why did Buddha not teach these?
See, Buddha was teaching meditation. His main purpose of Vipassana was to train the mind, to do yoga for the mind. But definitely he prescribed that a person who has to meditate should sit straight with a straight spinal cord, so sukhasana or any type of asana. His main concern was that there is suffering and how to remove the suffering. Although body also comes in that, but it is the mind which he wanted to work and clear out the suffering aspect. So the emphasis was mainly given on mind. So no asana in that way, but definitely asana has got its own value. So, he definitely said that bhikshus who were there should remain, always move. They should use their body also. Activity in body is also important because body is also a very important truth which has to be worked out. I'm not able to hear you, Binduji.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on the wheel of Dhamma? Because people, we have read from the books that when a Buddha is born or Bodhisattva is born, you know, the wheel of Dhamma start rotating, and that the momentum of that reduces every 500 years, and it comes to an end by 2500 years. So can you elaborate upon this from philosophical and scientific point of view?
You know, I mentioned in my talk about the first sermon of the Buddha, which is called Dhamma Chakra Pavattana Sutta. Dhamma, Dharma, Chakra is the wheel. Pravartana means to move. So he moved the wheel of Dhamma. So what he did in this first sermon, that he gave the essence of his teaching. And what was the essence of his teaching? His essence of the teaching was to know the middle path. Middle path is the path of balance. Always Buddha teaches the middle path. And he also talked about, he says, how one can get into this middle path, avoiding the two extremes. So what are the two extremes? He discussed that as a part of the middle path. And then he says that my teaching, to get into the middle path, what is needed is to know the four noble truths. The first noble truth, that there is suffering. The second noble truth, that there is suffering cannot come by itself. So it must have a cause. See, Buddha was such a scientific person. At that time, he said that nothing happens without a cause. Everything happens because of something. So that there is suffering, so there must be a cause of suffering. So one should find out the cause of suffering. If the cause of suffering is known, then the suffering will cease. So the third was that there is a cessation of suffering. And the fourth, that there is a path leading to the cessation of suffering. So how one can remove this suffering? He gave the eightfold path. And those eightfold path is nothing but the practice of sila, samadhi, and pragya. That is the practice of vipassana in the practical way. So his teaching is called the Dhamma. So Dhamma is it's a multi-significant term. So it has been used differently at different places. But one of the very important emphasis is that Dhamma is the law of nature. So, you know, so every time when Buddha comes, his mission is to preach the Dhamma, to move the Dhamma. Dhamma chakra is very important. And this, if one knows this Dharma chakra, he can come out of this, you know, cycle of birth and death. So, and, you know, one of the very great follower of Buddha, Ashoka, you know, he took to Dhamma in the right way, and he not only got benefited for himself, but he used this Dhamma for the governance also, and preached throughout the dissemination of Dhamma took place because of him. So Dhamma Chakra Pavartana is basically the first sermon. First sermon means the teaching of the Dhamma. So the whole teaching of the Buddha is nothing but Dhamma in that way.
Thank you, sir. One more question.
Ah.
How do children to get introduced into Vipassana meditation?
You know, for children, initially they are taught about the Anapana or the Samatha meditation. You know, once they practice the Samatha, they understand the breathing. And, you know, it is not the breathing exercise which is important. It is, it is awareness towards breathing. So, you know, we are not doing pranayama. So here we have to make a distinction between pranayama and anapana. Anapana is the practice. It is called anapana sati. Sati means awareness. Awareness towards the respiration. So basically mindfulness. So for children, you know, we begin with anapana. And, you know, in Maharashtra, in almost all the schools, they are teaching anapana. So in the beginning, when the class starts, for 10 minutes, they sit for anapana. So for children, we can start with anapana. Once they develop this technique of anapana, which is called samatha, you know, their concentration becomes more, mind becomes more concentrated. And because vipassana becomes a little bit more, it is a second state where you know, we are not connected with the breathing, but we are related with the awareness of the body. And this awareness, this function, what are we aware? We are aware of anything which is happening inside our body, the body sensations, So that helps in eradication of the mental defilements. But for children, I think Anapana is the most appropriate, which is the first step.
Yeah. And last question, sir. You have another 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So in this Vipassana meditation, we have different types of meditation, like Anapana, then Vipassana, then Metta Bhavana. So how does these different, meditation types helps in disintegration of self?
In a way, the technique is Vipassana. But in order to come up to that level, we need to concentrate our mind. So Anapana becomes very important. If you go and attend a 10-day Vipassana course, so you for 3 days you are taught nothing but Anapana, so that your mind becomes concentrated and your mind can feel each and every part of the body. Otherwise, what happens, wherever the pain is there, the mind goes towards the pain. So Anapana, in that way, it is called samatha meditation. Samatha meditation means concentration. So, mindfully you are concentrated. But the main technique is Vipassana, because it is this technique of Vipassana which eradicates the mental defilements and purifies the mind. And when the mind is pure, then we can have Metta Bhavana. Otherwise, the Metta Bhavana is mainly intellectual. If we are sitting in meditation, suddenly a thought comes, and a person who has been troubling you, he comes in the thought, and if you are told to give metta to him, you won't be able to give. It'll be intellectually, you'll say, oh, may you be happy, but inside your mind you'll say, hey, you have been troubling me. But if you practice Vipassana, then you really purify the mind, and then you understand that the person who's creating trouble for you is not it's not of great significance, because it is the thought of that person which creates problem to you. So you try to really try to eradicate that particular thought, and you give true metta to that person. So metta bhavana is a very important technique, but it comes only with the purification of mind, with the practice of Vipassana.
Okay, thank you so much
for thank you, Binduji.
Such an insightful talk. And sir, be online, and you can attend the rest of the speakers in this session. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Very insightful and very lucid talk on relevance of Vipassana meditation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, yes. Now our second speaker in this session is Dr. Vinod Deshmukh, and it is a pleasure to meet you, sir, during this session. Dr. Vinod Deshmukh, he is a neurologist by profession, did his MD in general surgery, and then later PhD from Glasgow. And then he has moved to USA, and he's been there since 1973. And he has worked in different universities in the US, especially in the University of Florida, College of Medicine, University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston. And his major contributions, apart from his profession as a neurologist, are in the field of neuroscience and philosophy of consciousness, meditation, neuroscience, meditation and consciousness. And he has published several books and over 70 research articles in esteemed journals. And he has been bestowed with many prestigious honors and awards. And some of them are, I will cite, Outstanding Achievement and Performance Award by the University of Florida, the John A. Bells Award for Medical Research from Florida, Albert Nelson Marcus Lifetime Achievement Award, and so on. So it's a pleasure to invite you, sir, to this conference, and invite you to deliver the talk on meditation, mind and brain from Craniospinal Organization. Over to Dr. Vinod Deshmukh, sir.
So can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. So I want to start by stating that meditating is returning to, merging and refreshing from the restful, serene and infinite source within. The self-integration and self-immersion is the key to pristine, insightful and creative self-awareness. It is intrinsic self-freedom and bliss. It is life itself. I want to start with my own personal experience that happened just this last Wednesday, October 7th. I woke up fully awake and refreshed, full of energy, awareness, and being. It was like an incessant fountain of fresh energy and awareness. There were no thoughts, memories, desires, plans, goals, or actions. All was well in itself. Nothing needed to be done or changed. Breathing was slow and periodic, with effortless long pauses. It was absolutely calm and quiet. Body was still, mind was silent, and the self was at ease with itself, as if it didn't exist separately. There was no ego, self-center, or self-pride. This is how it was happening at that moment. It was good as it was. All of my faculties were intact and working. I could see, hear, touch, and smell. I could move my hands and touch my forehead. All this started before 6:12 a.m. and I got up happily at 7:18 a.m. Now I'm doing my routine of journaling, yoga, pranayama, and meditation. That clear and precious experience and the feeling of wellness, aliveness, beloved presence, joy, and the cheerfulness continued. I don't live on memory. I'm fully with it. I felt relaxed, alert, and normal. For me, this was a meditative experience. Historically, meditative experiences have been described in many ways. Turiya, the fourth state of unitive consciousness, was described in Mandukya Upanishad. Atmaiva samvishati atmanatmanam. Self merges in itself. In Bhagavad Gita, Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. Self is contained in itself. Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Yogas chitta vritti nirodha tada drashtu swarupi avasthanam. So it's also seen in Shankaracharya's Aparokshanubhuti, Ashtavakra Gita, Jnaneshwari, and many more texts on Advaita Vedanta, Yoga, and Buddhism. It is described as Samadhi, Nirvana, Shunyata, Purnata, Jagruta Sushupti, Pradnya, Atmabhav, flow state, and much more in different spiritual texts and traditions. It is also described in modern literature as the non-dual awareness, self-transcendence, choiceless and timeless awareness, content-free consciousness, effortless being, the existential ground, ocean, the multisensory space, psychophysiological resting state, and the pristine loving presence with a spontaneous feeling of joy and holistic unity. I published an article in 2004 on Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness. In that article, I proposed that Turiya was a unique conscious state of non-rapid eye movement wakefulness, NREMW, and it is characterized by an optimal attentiveness with freedom from daydreaming and intrusive thoughts, behavioral quiescence with no internal speech or rapid eye movements, heightened perceptual clarity with moment-to-moment cognitive excellence, and an enhanced sense of well-being, serenity, compassion, and creativity. So we can look at 4 states of consciousness, not the conventional 3 states. The REM sleep and the REM wake state are high-frequency states. In REM sleep, there is dreaming, provoked feelings, autonomic activation, and a strong sense of agency and individual experience. In REM wakefulness, which is the common wakeful state, we have wandering mind, streams of thoughts, several conscious contents, provoked feelings, ups and downs in our feelings, and there is a duality of self and other. There is always an interaction with, again, a strong feeling of individual agency and individuality. In non-REM sleep, of course, there is no dreaming. There is no sense of agency. There is calm and quiet. And what is interestingly shown recently, there is synaptic remodeling, reorganization of the whole electrochemistry of the brain with consolidation of adapted memories and skills, with resolution of subconscious conflicts and deeper emotional reactions. In non-REM wake state or turiya, non-wandering mind and minimal or no conscious contents, thoughts or memories, imaginations or provoked feelings, there is spontaneous homeostatic feeling of blissful wellness and non-dual awareness. One is at ease with oneself and at home in the natural reality. It is a self-immersed existential experience. I also publish articles on conscious and preconscious aroused aware being. The brainstem extended reticular activating system, including the pedunculopontine nucleus, is a neuroelectrochemical powerhouse of our brain mind. It is continuously active in our daily life during all 4 stages of consciousness, namely dreamless sleep, dream sleep, thought-filled wakefulness, and thought-free non-dual awareness. It provides the neurophysiological basis of non-specific global consciousness, aroused aware being. It is the substratum of our specific individualistic conscious and preconscious mind. It is self-effulgent like a wellspring within. It is our spontaneous, self-illuminating, ever-present and homeodynamic, pristine flame of arousal awareness within. The famous Vedic statement, Ekam Jyotihi Bahudha Vibhati, one holistic energy manifests in many forms and many ways in this phenomenal world. Preconsciousness and the gamma activity has been recently shown in the brainstem by this Urbano et al. Group in the pedunculopontine nucleus. So you can actually record gamma activity in the neurons of the pedunculopontine nucleus, which is then transmitted to the cerebral cortex as the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system is, of course, very active during wakefulness as well as REM sleep. In addition, the RAS modulates virtually every system in the brain, which has implications for voluntary movement, behavioral state, and synergy with other homeostatic systems like the circadian rhythms, hormonal, and appetite control. What the authors are suggesting that the cortical gamma band activity participates in sensory perception, problem solving, and memory. But the gamma band activity in reticular activating system may participate in the processes of pre-conscious awareness and provide the essential stream of information for the formulation of many of our actions. That is, the RAS may play an early permissive role in volition, our will. In neuroscience, the neural circuits have been defined now for the REM sleep as well as wakefulness. There are several brainstem, midbrain, and brainstem nuclei with specific neurotransmitters which are released and which activate the neocortex. This is the pedunculopontine nucleus, tegmental nucleus, which the gamma activity has been shown. And of course, there is gamma activity in the cortex when there is perceptual sensory integration and action. Non-REM sleep has also been shown. The neural circuits are shown in the brainstem as well as in the cortex. In the non-REM sleep promoting pathways, the ventrolateral and median preoptic nuclei are prominently active, which then inhibit most of the other nuclei and networks in the brainstem, including locus coeruleus, parafacial zone, parabrachial nucleus, pedunculopontine nucleus, raphe nuclei, ventral tegmental area, tuberomammillary nucleus. So it's a very complex neural network in the brainstem. It's amazing how all this happens. There is also involvement of neuronal nitric oxide synthase neurons. And there is oral calming of the cerebral cortex and the thalamocortical system. One of the ways may be that is the reticular nucleus in the thalamus which is activated, which then releases GABA, and then the GABA inhibits or calms the cerebral cortex as a whole, including the hippocampus, which is the source of many memories. What is fascinating, some of the mechanisms of breathing, for instance, it has been quite a puzzle what really initiates or ignites our breathing. And one of the current theory that it is the hydrogen ion or the proton, which is the primal stimulus to the chemosensitive area postrema in the medulla, which then initiates a cascade of activity to generate the central pattern of breathing. In this sense, water serves as an essential fuel for breathing and many other biochemical reactions in the human body, which is an amazing living organism. Here you can see H-ion, pre-Bozinger complex, series of nuclei, finally the phrenic nerve nucleus, and the generation of rhythmic breathing. It is a divine gift to all of us, all living beings. Slow, deep breathing. Slow, deep breathing, especially with a wholehearted smile, like this one. With a wholehearted smile, or even a laughter, is very effective in calming brain-mind. It reduces stress, anxiety, and lowers blood pressure and heart rate. It is a part of yoga and many other meditative practices. It is also called a cardiorespiratory resonance breathing at 0.1 hertz or 6 breaths per minute, compared to the normal shallow and fast breathing at 12 to 15 breaths per minute. Here I want to show you that this is normal breathing and this is slow, deep breathing. And there are two types of pulmonary receptors, the rapidly adapting receptors, which are active in both types of breathings, but the slowly adapting receptors come only into effect and activity in hyperinflation or slow deep breathing. Similarly, the baroreceptor activity is more in slow deep breathing, and the respiratory sinus arrhythmia is more in slow breathing compared to normal breathing. The lung volume is also increased during slow deep breathing. I just want you to focus that all the vagal stimulation, central vagal stimulation from the rapid as well as slow adapting receptors and baroreceptors stimulates the nucleus tractus solitarius in the medulla, which then inhibits locus ceruleus, central nucleus of amygdala, and paraventricular nucleus of hypothalamus. And all these then produces an overall inhibition or cortical calming in the thalamocortical circuit. NTS is also connected to the pre-Botzinger complex with the central pattern generator. So slow deep breathing produces a meditative state by three different mechanisms. One mechanism is through the NTS and the amygdala and relaxation. Second mechanism through the respiratory center, locus ceruleus, and attentiveness or alertness. And thirdly, a nasal pathway through the olfactory bulb, hippocampus, consolidation of memory and skills, and the synchronized slow cortical rhythms as seen in meditative states. This is a fascinating research. It was amazing that these people could do this invasive study in a way in an epileptic patient. These are two different epileptic patients, patient A and patient B. In patient A, preoperatively for surgery for epilepsy, they had introduced 20 different intracranial electrodes, with each point being a point of recording. So they had 320 recordings from the whole brain, both gray matter, white matter, as well as CSF. Here you can see the green area, which is superior temporal gyrus, and the red area, which is hippocampus. And this is an electrode with all these points of contact. They found gamma activity only in the gray matter, not in the white matter or in CSF. So they came to the conclusion, Herrera et al., that his group found that breathing could act as a hierarchical organizing principle for the neuronal oscillations throughout the brain. They demonstrated gamma activity in several areas, including frontal, premotor, orbitofrontal, motor cortex, insula, superior temporal gyrus, and amygdala during volitional breathing, and in anterior cingulum, premotor, insula, and hippocampus during breath awareness, as in pranayama and mindfulness. One of the fundamental questions that we all face is, how is mind related to the brain? How does mind emerge from the brain? And this question has been addressed by almost every scientist from all different fields, including quantum physics. Here is the latest article in quantum physics in which they propose a perspective on the brain and mind, in which they propose a model in which there is a field within field, an electromagnetic field within an electromagnetic field. So the brain produces an internal physical space-time with extracellular fluid around the neurons, which then create an operational space-time, which is a linking mechanism or the interface, or I call it the membrane. And then that produces or emerges a phenomenal space-time, which is our whole experience, both internal as well as external experience. It's an amazing concept to think that our essential nature is probably primal energy, including electromagnetic energy and photic energy. Talking about electromagnetic energy, we need to realize that it's a very powerful source. And recently it has been shown that the electromagnetic field in an MRI scanner can induce a transient nystagmus in healthy volunteers. This is explained by the influence of Lorentz force on the ionic flow in the endolymph of the inner ear. This is the magnetic field. This is the endolymph in utricle, ion currents endolymph, currents of potassium ions, sodium ions, calcium ions. So these are actually, these flow of ions is influenced by the magnetic field, by the Lorentz force. And there are several interesting articles on that. This, of course, occurred more during a very powerful magnet, which is 7 Tesla, not the usual 1.5 or 3 Tesla magnets. Another approach to mind-brain interaction was proposed by Northup and his group. What he suggested, he in fact proposed a new neuroscience called space-time neuroscience. So spatio-temporal integration, he calls it the neuromental integration. The self integrates its brain function, including decision-making, attention, and reward processing. And all this electrochemical activity from the brain generates this sense of self and the mental activity. During meditation, traditionally, these 3 ways, if the common state of mind is this mind wandering, in which there are multiple contents in the brain mind, including visual, auditory, and somatosensory, and they are rather chaotic, disorganized, hardly any control or order in it. And there is a broad present awareness. There is no focusing. In open monitoring or open mindfulness, there is order in the mind, in that all these sensory stimuli are ordered in certain way and processed in an orderly fashion. And in focus attention, there is a single stimulus or a single object which is being meditated on, which may be an image, a thought, an idol, or just simple breath awareness becomes this. So this goes by Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, that is dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. In samadhi, the classic description is swarupa shunyamiva samadhi, as if the individual agent is not there. It is selflessness, self-transcendence, self-unawareness, self-immersion, or the wholeness of being. As the Zen saying goes, to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by all things. I love that statement. Now, Goldstein from National Institute of Autonomic Nervous System recently proposed a central stress system and the extended autonomic nervous system. By extended autonomic nervous system, he includes not only the sympathetic, parasympathetic, but also neuroendocrine and neuroimmune systems. And this normally results in behavioral and peripheral adaptation. The practice of yoga and mindfulness meditation helps this process of adaptation to overcome stress. The stressors act on both the systems, the sympathetic system with locus coeruleus and norepinephrine, which release catecholamines and peripheral adaptation. Corticotropin releasing hormone which secretes ACTH, glucocorticoids, and then peripheral adaptation. And this also feeds into the behavioral adaptation. What has been described is central autonomic network. The central autonomic network is not only in the hypothalamus and the brainstem, but also in the cerebral cortex, including medial prefrontal cortex, precuneus, anterior cingulate cortex, insular cortex, thalamus, and the hypothalamus. Also, what is not shown in these diagrams is amygdala and hippocampus. In meditation, we learn the skill of self-regulation. And the self-regulation includes attentional control, emotion regulation, and self-awareness. And it is a process, it's a learning process. We start in the early stage of effortful learning and doing, in the middle stage, effort to reduce mind wandering, and in the advanced stage, it becomes effortless being, effortless performance. As some of you may have seen, Nadal played his final game, a final match in the French Open. It was unbelievable. Or Federer playing in Wimbledon. Brain regions involved in mindfulness meditation. This has been demonstrated by functional MRI. The areas commonly involved in meditative states is insula with interoceptive experience, posterior cingulate cortex and precuneus with self-perceptions and self-related processing, anterior cingulate cortex with self-monitoring, prefrontal cortex with decision-making based on values or valence, amygdala for threat processing, and ventral striatum, including nucleus accumbens, for pleasure processing or processing of joy. There is a nested hierarchy of conscious and voluntary decision-making and behavioral control in frontal lobe networks. The very basic network is sensory motor control. A level above that is the contextual control, in which we take into consideration what happened just before and then act based on the context of the situation and hopefully the consequences of our actions. And the third level is the schematic control, in which we have a goal or a purpose or intention to achieve something. So this is the highest level in the prefrontal cortex. There is also the executive functions processed in the frontal lobes. The key function in this is the working memory, inhibitory control, reasoning, maintenance of information, task switching, and also planning. It is the working memory that helps us to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or to sequence our words in a sentence, or making a cup of tea, we sequence our actions. All this sequencing depends on the working memory. In patients with Alzheimer's disease, when the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is damaged, working memory doesn't work, and such a person is unable to make a cup of tea for himself or herself. It's unfortunate. There is a self-other duality. The temporoparietal junction of the brain is the region where the distinction between self and other is proposed. This creates the experience of duality. In the unitive state of meditation, this distinction is transcended or minimized. This is supramarginal gyrus, angular gyrus, Wernicke's area, superior temporal gyrus, and this oval is the region, is the temporoparietal junction in which self and the other interactions are processed. With functional MRI, many functional activities have been demonstrated. I think speech is extremely important, both what we say to others and also what we say to ourselves is crucial, because that is a strong stimulus that generates either positive or negative feelings. So it is very important to realize what you are saying to yourself. Don't dwell on too many negative things. Stay positive and try to solve the problem. Stay present, stay problem focused, present focus, and try to solve the problem both for yourself as well as for the community. These are the functional changes between speech versus rest, speech versus tongue movement, speech versus lips, speech versus monotone, speech versus singing versus resting state, or reading versus resting state. I want to point out that it's not only the cortex, but also the brainstem and the subcortex, or the precortex, I would like to call it, is involved in subconscious or preconscious processing. This is the region of superior colliculus and the periaqueductal gray, which has been shown to be linked to the default mode network. And this is triggered in post-traumatic stress disorder. A patient may not be consciously aware of it, but his body responds to the threat stimulus in PTSD with the activation of this midbrain region. Of course, the midbrain region, including superior colliculus and periaqueductal gray, are the survival networks. They are absolutely essential. Our very survival depends on that. This mouse, for instance, when he notices an eagle flying up in the sky, he has to take instantaneous action, either run away, hide, to save himself. Otherwise, he is dead. There is no time to think or hesitate. So this is the direct path. If there is little more time, then he can consult with the amygdala or the ventral tegmental area and then come to a decision. And then the periaqueductal gray then initiates a locomotor response. There is a center, mesencephalic locomotor center, which initiates all whole body activity, including walking, running, swimming, speaking, etc. I want to share, this is a very fascinating and my favorite way of doing meditation is to walk in nature. Nature experience reduces mental rumination and prefrontal cortex overactivation during nature walks versus urban walk. This was recently shown beautifully in Stanford University article. This is the region where the overactivation is minimized and the mind wandering is reduced. You can see a big difference between nature walking versus the urban walking. So I take a holistic ecosystemic perspective where brain is embodied, body is embedded in personal environment, and the personal environment is of course part of the world, cosmos, or universe. So the whole mind or the cognitive system is embodied with a bidirectional exchange of energy, matter, and information. I want to end my talk with a simple journal entry that I wrote on October 15th, just 2 days ago. Holistic existence in nature. I exist in nature. I exist in reality. Every breath or move breaks its stillness. Every sound or word breaks its silence. Every form or image breaks its space. Just by staying still, quiet, silent, and serene, one finds oneself immersed in reality. Reality is everywhere all the time. It is self-sentient, self-powered, and self-effulgent. It is filled with beauty, goodness, peace, and bliss. It is a blessing to be immersed in reality. It is a holistic existence and experience. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Dr. Vinod Deshmukh, for that very insightful, very deep talk on neuroscience of mind-brain interaction and how we go through the different states of consciousness and accordingly how the brain activity gets modulated. And also you talked about we can also achieve through physiological mechanism, we can also achieve the meditative state. So such a wonderful system we have.
Thank you.
Actually,
Thank you.
there are so many questions regarding, Turiya, NREM, awareness. So you can take some few questions, sir, actually. We have still 10 more minutes time. So you said, during NREM, it is a non-specific global consciousness, like we are into that state of consciousness. So is one aware of external stimuli more than awake state in that particular NREM state, Turiya state, what you say?
Yes.
And there is one more relevant question regarding NREM only. Awareness needs object split.
Yes.
How in NREM state we can have non-dual awareness?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, as they say, right? But it is something similar to like falling asleep. You see, when you fall asleep, it is natural, spontaneous. There is no, you just fall asleep in the non-REM sleep.
Yeah.
If you are aware of it, then you are not asleep. You are still thinking. So in the same way, when I walk in nature, I forget myself.
Yeah.
I'm so completely absorbed in the natural beauty that I'm not there. I just love it. I'm just in a state of bliss. And that is true for whatever activity you choose. When you are playing tennis, like Nadal or Federer, they don't think about it. They just go with the flow. It has also been described as the flow state. And that is true. It's a great, great state. It's a dynamic state. It is true living, complete living. And it is amazing. It does happen. It does happen. You have to let go. You have to take a deep breath, smile wholeheartedly, and let go. Like this picture I showed you.
Very good. You have sent
I
me
was just, I was just standing under the gulmohar tree that I had planted. And it's such a happy moment. Beautiful. We got the seeds from Florida Keys and I planted the tree from seeds. And it's a huge 5 big trees now in our yard. I loved it. And I was so happy. I was not there. We can say I was there and I wasn't there. It's a matter of what you think, who you think you are. As Raman Maharshi always says, who are you? It's the same thing. Koham.
True, it's true.
Kene shitam, preshitam manaha. So we have been asking these questions. And of course, India has been the land, the motherland of meditation and these self-inquiries. So I'm very proud of the Indian culture.
Yeah. One more question, sir. This is, can you elaborate on perception of time and consciousness?
Okay, that's a good question because we are kind of so used to thinking in terms of time. Also, we are almost addicted to words and numbers. You see? As J. Krishnamurti says, we are slaves to words. You see, words are just symbols. There is no truth or reality in words. When you say the word lion, it means nothing to the actual fact of lion. So the same is true. So in a way, in meditation, you have to kind of minimize the words, minimize the internal talk, internal speech, learn to be quiet and silent, learn to be at ease with yourself, drop everything, don't hold on to anything, and let go. And there it is. The truth is always there. The bliss is always there. You don't have to go there. There is no path to yourself. That is the beauty of it. There is no, if somebody tells you, I want to go to myself, how can you go to yourself? You are yourself already. So that is the fact of it. That is the truth of it. And it does happen by really being so completely, passionately involved in the activity that you choose to do at the moment. Being fully present, fully, wholeheartedly present in the moment, with full attention, full passion, complete heart and mind in the moment that you are involved in, whether it is nature walk, whether it is swimming, whether it is walking, running, painting, singing, whatever you are doing. That is the wonder of it. That is the beauty of it. And it is the meditative state. That is Turiya. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Intense meditative state, modulate brain functions. And accordingly, we will be in that highly blissful state of consciousness.
I hope so.
So you can achieve either, you can just, release everything. It is a release phenomenon, actually.
It
Don't
is.
hold anything. And then
it
you
is,
can be in that state of blissful state.
and it is self-refreshing. The
Yes.
whole electrochemistry refreshes. That's what happens in non-REM sleep. It is refreshing. All the negative molecules are removed. You know, cortisol, adrenaline, catecholamines are all removed. And the brain is refreshed, mind is refreshed. Synaptic rekindling, synaptic remodeling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Okay.
This is about your nature walk versus urban walk.
Oh, yeah.
So some, some of the participants want more details about, the
Okay.
nature walk versus urban walk.
Okay, that study was performed in Stanford University.
Oh.
And Stanford University has a beautiful campus, if you've been there. So what they did, they chose volunteers, students from college students, and they specified the route to go along the nature trail, take photos, up to 10 photos, and then come back, and then they did their MRI before and after the nature walk. And the other group, control group, they sent it to the downtown city center in Palo Alto, and they spent the same amount of time, took photos of different flashlights and shops and whatnot, and then finally they had MRI before and after. And they compared the two, and I've given the reference of the Stanford study. You should look it up. It's amazing. It's wonderful to see that finally nature, Mother Nature, is the great healer and the inspirer for all of us. So walk in nature, spend time in nature, appreciate the natural beauty and the wonder that it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for that
insightful
and very lucid presentation on self-consciousness, mind, brain.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and please be online.
Okay.
We have 2 more wonderful talks. Please be with us. Thank you so much.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, the next speaker in this symposium is Professor Narayan Srinivasan from IIT Kanpur. He's a good friend of mine, and he has moved to IIT Kanpur recently, and he is now at the interdisciplinary program in cognitive science. And before that, he has been working at CBCS, Center for Behavioral and Cognitive Studies at Allahabad University for the past 16 years. And he contributed immensely in the area of cognitive science, especially to look at the mental processes, especially attention, emotion, consciousness, decision-making, and using various multiple methodologies. And he has also contributed immensely in the areas of neuroscience of meditation. He has been bestowed with many awards and honors. Dr. Srinivasan is a fellow of the National Academy of Psychology. Fellow of Association for Psychological Science, fellow of Psychonomic Society, and he has been awarded the Excellence Award by the Allahabad University. He has been the editor, associate editor in many of the top-notch journals like Frontiers in Cognitive Science, Cognitive Processing, Psychological Studies, Neuroscience of Consciousness, and so on. Over to Professor Narayanan. We welcome you and invite you to give the talk on neuroscience and cognition. Professor Narayanan.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Everything fine?
Yes.
Okay. So first I would like to thank Professor Bindu Kuti, Professor Gangadhar and other colleagues at NIMHANS. It's always a pleasure to see all of you and talk to you. So I'm going to talk about the effects of meditation, essentially long-term practice of meditation on cognition in general, but more specifically on some of our recent work looking at how our experience of the world changes due to practice of meditation, and how it also changes our attachment. I'll come more specifically in terms of how we did it. Essentially, what you will see is a bunch of psychophysical studies, since I'm a psychophysicist. So the basic question we asked is, how does meditation training influence brain and cognition? As I said, we will talk about perceptual awareness. As far as today is concerned, I will focus more on visual awareness. I also studied time, which I will not talk too much about it today, although it is kind of present in the second part of my talk. I will also talk about what is called action outcome binding. I'll explain that to you later, and attachment. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar with visual psychophysics, here is an example. In terms of studies with meditation, there has been, of course, a long list of studies that have looked at perceptual awareness. The only difference is that here we are not primarily interested in behavioral performance per se, although that can be present as well, but on phenomenology, how your experience of the world itself changes. Of course, we try to do controlled experimentation in the lab, and we use different kinds of phenomena in the lab to study visual awareness or temporal awareness. So for example, binocular rivalry. So binocular rivalry is when you present two different stimuli to two different eyes. And then what happens is that you perceive one stimulus at a time, and they keep on alternating. And that's called binocular rivalry. You don't, there is an alternation of what you experience, even though the stimulus information is constantly available to the system. In 2005, Carter and colleagues showed that this was with Tibetan Buddhist meditators, that their durations, their rivalry times, the times for which they experience a particular percept, is much larger than non-meditators. I will talk about our work on after images. So where essentially we use color after images as a means of studying visual awareness in meditators. As I said, the other aspect that we have studied and many others have studied, like Mark Whitman and colleagues, Aviva Berkovich-Wahana, and so on, they have looked at how perception of time changes due to the practice of meditation. And combining both time and vision in some sense, we have looked at the effects of meditation on Necker cube. So I will talk about after images and Necker cube during this talk. And if you want something else, we can talk about it during the discussion session. So let's just look at it. All I want all of you to do is just stare at the middle of this blue square. This is a color after, essentially you stare at this for a minute or 2 minutes. And then afterwards, people will show you, let us say, a white screen. What you will see will be an yellow square as an after image. Even though there is no stimulus on the screen, you will perceive an yellow after image. And there is a systematic relationship between the color of the inducer, in this case blue square, and the color of the after image. So if you keep staring at it, and I hope you have stared at it, we don't have too much time, so let me just so now, for those of you who are actually following instruction, just blink your eye once. And then I hope some of you will see some vague outline of an yellow square, which may be a bit blurry because I don't think you saw it long enough. But this is called an after image. So how do we do this? In the early 2000s, it was shown that the way you pay attention to this blue square in this case changes properties of the after images. So for example, it changes the duration of the after images. So if you pay more attention to the blue square, the inducer, then your after image durations are weaker, which means they are there for a shorter period of time. Similarly, if you pay less attention to the blue square, then your after image will stay on for much longer period of time. Remember, there is nothing on the screen. It is only in your conscious awareness. So what we did is, of course, make people do a particular letter recognition task or some kind of a letter task, which is shown at the middle of the blue square. Letters keep on flashing one after another for 20 seconds. You are asked to detect how many times the letter S appeared. There were 4 different conditions. The letter S could be small, large, or we also used a large letter made of small letters. So you can have a large letter S made up of small 8s, or a large 8, which is here, made up of small letters of S. So we varied the size, essentially the size of the spotlight of attention, as well as the level to which you can pay attention. And we showed that the duration of the after image, this is just with normal adults, changes as a function of how you pay attention. Now, what we did with meditators, of course, we use the same task, but we all asked them to report, for example, when the after image appeared in their awareness, when the after image disappeared. We also asked them how sharp the after image was, which is clarity, and they had to rate on a scale, and also the hue, or I just put it as color, or saturation. So now what you see here, I mean, the specific conditions are not important. All you notice immediately is that the duration of the after images is much longer for meditators compared to controls, almost 3 times longer or 4 times longer. Now this, of course, we also had a couple of other conditions. Interestingly enough, we also found that in general, meditators reported that the after images had much higher sharpness or clarity compared to non-meditators. So 2 findings. 1, the after image durations are much longer, and 2, the after images themselves are much sharper among meditators compared to non-meditators. We have also done a functional MRI study to see what areas show different activations when people are seeing these after images. And the basic finding, which I've just put here, is that you do see more activation in the roughly so-called color areas around V3, V4. V4 is actually the color area, but on the right side, the right inferior occipital cortex. And you also find something to do with attention, because we think that the differences in after image durations is actually due to differences in focused attention in the right inferior frontal cortex, which you see here. So there is a lateralization, but the only main message I want to give is that not only psychophysically we see changes in your awareness, but we also see corresponding changes in brain activity. The second kind of study that we have done is to use something called a Necker cube. All you have to do is just look at this so-called Necker cube. Many of you may have seen it in the internet. If you keep staring at this Necker cube, and please stare at it for some time, the Necker cube, you will see it in two different orientations. The stimulus, of course, is not changing on the monitor. What is changing is your perceptual experience. Either the Necker cube is oriented this way, or the Necker cube is oriented that way, and this keeps on alternating. Normally, what we do is we ask people to press a key when there is a switch from your experience of the Necker cube one way to the other way, and we get these data, and we use the times for which you experience the stimulus as a measure of an aspect of your visual awareness. Many studies have been done with Necker cube. I'm just going to present one study from Conmeyer and colleagues, which was done recently in 2019. Essentially, you see, in this case, a fairly complicated arrangement of Necker cube. This is not a single Necker cube, but they actually had a fairly complex arrangement. What they asked subjects to do, both meditators and non-meditators, is that they presented this cube, this configuration for 800 milliseconds. After a blank display of 400 milliseconds, they again presented, and they asked people to indicate whether the first time when it was presented, whatever they saw or experienced, the orientation was the same the second time as well. So now, of course, there are two possible conditions. Either it could reverse, they call it the reversal condition, or it could stay the same, which they call the stability condition. What they also did is, when they came here and asked people to respond, they also measured all along EEG. They obtained the event-related potentials, and they were interested in seeing, number one, whether there are any differences in event-related potentials, a kind of a neural correlate, corresponding to whether there is a change or no change between meditators and non-meditators. I'm just going to present one result from their paper. So they measured 4 components, and they are related to either reversal. In this case, this is reversal positivity, reversal negativity. These are different ERP components. Amplitudes are shown for subjects here. And they also looked at what they call parietal positivity and a frontal negativity. In the first 3, they did not find any group differences between meditators and non-meditators. What they did find is a difference in the frontal negativity, as you see with this red and the blue here. And essentially, they did source localization and found that there is increased activity in the middle or posterior cingulate cortex and the left supplementary motor area. And in more frontal sides, in the right medial prefrontal cortex, showed increased reversal related activity when there is a change in visual awareness from one orientation to another orientation. What we did, of course, is in one sense a bit simpler. We did a psychophysical study recently, and this paper is published in Journal Mindfulness. Let's go back to the Necker cube, single Necker cube here. So that's the first thing that we used. The first thing we wanted to understand is that, okay, as a person, I see this Necker cube. It keeps flipping back and forth. But can I control it? Can I control how fast or how soon this Necker cube flips back and forth? So there are two ways we can ask the person to control it. One way to control it is to ask the person and say, well, you see a particular orientation. Now just hold on to it, this perception, this experience that you are having, hold on to it as long as possible. Of course, eventually it will switch, but they can try to control what they are seeing. In the other case, we ask participants to, try to change it as soon as possible. And people do it for a certain number of minutes because you have to keep on doing this. Every time when there is a change from one orientation to another orientation in your experience, you press a key. And we measure all these times, and these are called dwell times, which is what's shown in the y-axis here. The blue shows data from non-meditators, the red shows data from meditators. There are 3 instruction conditions because these are people are asked voluntarily to control what they experience in this case. The neutral condition is when they are not told anything. We just tell them, okay, just if there is a switch, press the key. In the whole condition, as I explained, we tell them hold on to it as long as possible. And in the speed condition, we tell them to switch as fast as possible. What do you see here? Let's look at the neutral condition. In the neutral condition, you see that in general, the experience, in this case, the Necker cube, stays on for much longer for meditators compared to the non-meditators. This is in the neutral condition when there is no explicit instruction to do anything. When we explicitly tell people to hold on to it as long as possible, of course, even non-meditators can do it to some extent. It's not like we have no control. You can see there is still an increase for non-meditators. That's fine. But you also see there is a huge increase among meditators. They can hold on to this for as long as 15 seconds when we ask them to do so. When we ask them to speed up, if you look at dwell times themselves, this difference is not significantly different. It seems like there is only so much fast switching that one can do. But if you look at relative to neutral, there is a much bigger drop because this is much higher here among meditators compared to non-meditators. But maybe it seems like there is some kind of minimal amount, at least in this Necker cube case, beyond which nobody can go down, so to speak. But this is not the only thing. Remember, we are getting essentially a time series, a lot of dwell times. We can get a probability density function, a distribution of these dwell times. Once we get a distribution, remember this shows only the mean. Mean is only one of the parameters of a distribution. We can look at other parameters. So we model this using the function given here. The actual function is given here. But the main thing to notice is it has 2 parameters, k and theta. Now the parameter k, which is called the shape parameter, is essentially gives some information about the skewness of the distribution. It's inversely proportional to skewness. K is equal to, the skewness is equal to 2 divided by square root of k. And the parameter theta is proportional to variance. So not only we can look at the mean, but we can look at the variance and essentially the skewness in the distributions. Because it's a time series, we can measure these. In addition to that, there is an interesting thing, one more thing that we can do. We can find the correlation between these two parameters. Normally, these correlations will be high. Okay? So how, if it's very highly correlated, that means there is only so much amount of control you have. If they become decorrelated, then you can consider it as a measure of control that you have over visual experience. Okay, so exactly what we find in terms of meditators and non-meditators, well, we find that the parameters are of course different between meditators and non-meditators. That's pretty obvious. But the most important thing is the correlation. In the whole condition, the correlation drops quite drastically for meditators, but not for non-meditators, indicating that they are much able to control their visual experience compared to meditators could do it compared to non-meditators. This is what we call endogenous control. We ask people to do it with instruction. But you can study cognitive control, or what is sometimes called exogenous control, by actually giving information that is in a sense congruent or incongruent with what the main stimulus is. Some of you may be familiar with the Stroop task, in which, for example, you are asked to report a color and the meaning of the color could be congruent or incongruent. Or you may have seen flanker task, where you have arrows, the central arrow pointing in one direction, where the flankers, the one adjacent, are pointing either in the same direction or in the opposite direction. The general finding is people are generally slower if the flankers are incongruent, and the magnitude or the difference in response time between incongruent flanker condition and the congruent flanker condition is in a sense measure of cognitive control, how much control you have. Now this is the general finding. Now in the case of naked cube, instead of showing a fixed arrow or like a Stroop effect, a stimulus like a color word, we still show a naked cube, but it is flanked by 8 cubes, which are themselves oriented in one way, in this case oriented this way, and this is not so ambiguous, or oriented this way. Okay? But the central one will keep changing, your experience will keep changing. The surrounding flankers, of course, do not change. Now you can see how your visual experience for the central flanker is changed by the surrounding flankers. If you are able to control, then you should show less flanker effect. And this is what people have shown with arrows and all that in the case of meditators, as well as with Stroop effect. So that's not a novel finding per se. So what we find here, and in this case, remember, we are getting a continuous time series of 12 times, and we are measuring your experience, not how fast you can respond. With non-meditators, we get a fairly typical flanker effect. Dwell times are longer, which is shown in green here, compared to congruent, sorry. So then in this case, sorry, one thing I forgot to say, when the flankers are congruent, you will see it for longer time compared to the other effect that I described. And when the flankers are incongruent, you will see it for shorter time. So when it's congruent, dwell times are longer, and when it's incongruent, dwell times are shorter. And this is the standard flanker effect, which we get with non-meditators. The most important thing is what happens with meditators. With meditators, there is no difference between whether these flankers were present or absent. Okay? You can look at the distributions as well, not just the mean, which is the point estimate, right? You can see that if you look at these dotted lines, which are the distributions for non-meditators, you can see the distributions are different from each other. Whereas for meditators, they are almost on top of each other. It's almost like these flankers do not exist at all. They were so focused on these meditators, and these are fairly experts in concentrative meditation. I forgot to mention. This particular study was done with Sahaj Samadhi meditators. The study by Conmeyer et al. Were done with mindfulness meditators. I'm sorry about that. So their focus was so good that these flankers did not have any effect on their experience at all. Whereas, of course, in the context of non-meditators, they had an effect. So this is just to show that whatever experience these meditators were having, they are able to control it both exogenously when there is conflicting information present in the world, as well as endogenously, that is by instructions, voluntarily they can control it themselves. In the second part of the study, I'm going to talk a little bit about binding and attachment. There are many different ways you can talk about it, and I'm going to talk about, since I study perception, I'm going to talk about it in a particular way. What people have shown is that if there is an action, and I will give an example of it, and an outcome, there is a certain amount of time, there is a gap between the action and the outcome. We can ask you to estimate this time using, you can do verbal estimates or any other method of time estimation. And we can, and this measure is, you can use it as binding. This temporal estimate between an action and an outcome has been used as an implicit measure of agency that you have over whatever you are trying to produce an outcome in the world. And what we have done is to use this measure as an operationalization as a potential measure of attachment. Okay, so what exactly, how this works? This is the basic so-called intentional binding phenomena. In the case of intentional binding, this particular experiment was done by Haggard and colleagues in 2002. There is a clock, an arrow is moving in the clock. People are asked to press a key and then indicate at what point in time they press the key. So they need to report when they press the key where the clock hand was. After a little bit delay, in this example 250 milliseconds, in their study there was an auditory tone, and subjects were asked to estimate the time between the key press and the onset of the auditory tone. They have to give a number. You may think it's very difficult, but with a little bit of practice, people can do it to some extent. We are not interested in accuracy of it. We are interested in how it changes. These verbal estimates change over time. Generally, people, if you are looking at a span of 1 second, for very short durations within 1 second, let's say 100 milliseconds or so, they overestimate. They give a larger estimate than 100. If it is closer to 1 second, say 900, then they generally tend to underestimate. This is a well-known law called the Viardot's law in time psychophysics. This is something that they have shown. Now, shorter this estimate, people consider it as more binding. Longer the estimate, it is considered lesser binding. So now, how are we going to come and talk about attachment, right? One of the things we are attached to is ourselves, in the sense that we are attached to thinking about ourselves or processing information about ourselves. People have shown that we seem to process information about ourselves. We seem to give a preference to it compared to information about others in many different paradigms in psychology and neuroscience. So one of the things that people have used is the so-called self-association task. The basic task work is simple, and because normally there is a confound of familiarity associated with oneself, because we know more about ourselves than others. In the lab, people have tried to use arbitrary stimuli and then do this. So how this works is like this. Let's take 3 different shapes, a square, a circle, and a triangle. They are arbitrarily associated with 3 different categories: self, friend, and stranger. And this is completely arbitrary. People learn this in the lab. Okay. Normally, these circles and squares and triangles are no meaning to us, in the sense in terms of self versus other. They are arbitrarily associated. People learn this association in the lab. Once they learn this association, then people are asked to do a perceptual task. That is, they are given a shape, which is shown here above the fixation point. They are shown a category label, which is shown at the bottom. And people are asked, do these things you have already learned, which goes with what goes with what? These two things, do they match or they do not match? That's it. We measure their response time, we measure their accuracy. And what is the general finding? The general finding is pretty simple. If the information is associated with self, people respond faster. If the information is associated with, let's say, stranger, then they respond slower. Same thing with accuracy as well. Self, higher accuracy, stranger, less accuracy. So let's first look at on this side on non-meditators data. You see the standard self-association effect. Self-response times are faster than friend. Self-response times are also faster than stranger. There is no difference, significant difference between friend and stranger. Sometimes you get, sometimes you don't get it. But there is a clear benefit for processing self-associated information. Same thing you get with accuracy as well. That is, your accuracy is much higher for self compared to friend or stranger. Now, what happens with meditators? These were mindfulness meditators. This particular study was done in Italy by actually colleagues of mine. They actually conducted the study there. So what do we find? Well, pretty much the same effect. There is really not much difference between meditators and non-meditators. Perceptually speaking, from a perceptual task, they show pretty much the same pattern. Self is faster than the stranger, and if you compare this dark green with dark green, there is no difference as well. Similarly, the accuracy seems like a bit better, but the pattern is still the same. Self is better than friends and strangers. So really there is no big difference between meditators and non-meditators in this perceptual task. What happens to binding, which is the reason why we wanted to do this. So let's look at the task first before we see the result. The task is pretty simple. They learn this, they do this matching task, they come another day, again they learn this association, just remember it. Now there is a fixation point. People are asked to press a key, just a space bar key. After some variable interval, 100, 400 or 700 milliseconds, one of these shapes, remember there is no verbal category now. Yeah, I got it. One of these shapes, last slide, this is the last one. So one of these shapes, which are associated with, say, self, friend or stranger, remember these shapes are randomly associated with categories, so they change for subjects. The shapes appear, and once the shape appears, people are asked to estimate the time between when they pressed the key here and when the shape appeared. And they also have to respond what was the shape, just to indicate for us to be sure that they, actually paying attention to what the shape was. Of course, they pay attention to the shape. It's not very difficult. Their performance is fine. So let's look at, so what we have is an estimated duration, right? They verbally estimate the duration. And let's look at the data from non-meditators. What do we see here? Well, what we see here is a self-advantage. There is a difference, big difference in temporal estimate between self and stranger, which you see from this dark green and yellow here at 100 milliseconds. You also see it at 400 milliseconds. And generally, intentional binding effects in this kind of paradigm starts reducing or when you get close to 1 second. So we don't see this effect at 700 milliseconds. So there is more binding. By binding here, it seems like when self-related information is presented, it appears closer to you in time than other information. This is for non-meditators. And if this measure is related to agency, that I am the cause of this kind of agency, then even if shorter, you have higher agency. Okay, when the temporal estimate is shorter, you have higher agency, so you have more agency, and which means you are attached to this more information in the way we operationalize. So there is this difference, significant difference here. What happens with meditators? No effect at all. There is no significant difference between self or stranger here. Their estimates of time are pretty much the same, whether it is self, friend, or stranger, which means there is probably no difference in agency. So essentially, they do not show any preference when it's something to do with agency for self-related information, which non-meditators show. So now, what is the difference? Remember, both tasks use same information. So we also looked at the correlation between the times, response times there, difference between self and stranger with the perceptual task, and also with the verbal estimate of the temporal duration task. So the green is meditators, the red is, of course, correlation for non-meditators. What you see here is for non-meditators, there is a significant correlation. So the perceptual bias gets transferred when it comes to agency-related measurement as well, in the context of non-meditators. What happens with meditators? Sure, there is a perceptual difference, but there is no correlation at all. The correlation is not present at all. So it seems like meditators, there is a dissociation between, sure, they process the information better, but it doesn't really affect how preferentially they handle this information when it comes to their measure of sense of agency related measurement. So just to conclude, not only us, but many others have shown that meditation results in better perception and attention. And what we have shown is that not only you get better performance objectively, but it also results in changes in their visual experience or temporal experience. And not only there is a change, they can control their experience much better. Not only they can control their experience better, when it comes to information related to self or the other, they are able to treat it the same way in some sense. So when it comes to sense of agency measurements, they show less binding and possibly less attachment to things that are related to their own. Let me acknowledge the students who have done a lot of this work. Amrein, Shraddhanjali, Shan, Mukesh, my colleague Antonino and his team, and funding agencies, DST and University Grants Commission. Thank you.
Professor Narayan, it is a very interesting but hardcore neuroscience and psychophysical talk on perceptual awareness, yes, and how meditation, enhances this awareness. We have got some few questions, but the thing is, due to the shortage of time, I will ask you only one question, then we will move on to the next keynote address. And we have to felicitate the meditation.
So
here, one simple question, that is, are there any clinical populations or states of mind brain where bistability illusions are not reported? Any?
Yes, there are. So the people have done shown these and found different effects with different kinds of altered states. Many other states, including drug-induced states, like I can recall psilocybin and all that. And so various altered states change the properties of bistability, essentially, or how you see these stimuli. The only extra thing is that the only difference I will make with meditation is that meditators seem to be able to control this in addition to just the changes, which of course you can change due to many reasons, but meditators can voluntarily control this, which I don't think, in fact, I don't know what happens for other altered states, whether how well in those altered states people will be able to control. I think it's an open question, but maybe with this, many others may look into that as well.
So with this, I will send you the questions now. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, we have come to an end of the meditation symposia, and it is our pleasure to felicitate the speakers of meditation symposium. Over to the administrators. Where are they? Where are they? Yeah. So I request you to felicitate. So these are all virtual felicitations. So as a token of appreciation, we would like to hand over a memento to all the speakers, and that will reach you soon by post. Okay. Dr. Ravindra Pant. So much.
It will be handed over to you soon, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Vinod Deshmukh. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valid time and presentation. Professor Narayan Srinivasan.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, they have to focus it.
It will be given.
It's fine. Thank you.
So much for this wonderful session. We all enjoyed so much, and thank you so much. And please join us for the keynote address, going to be delivered by Dr. Selvam.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Over to you back, ma'am.
Yeah, we will move on to. Now we have come to the conclusion of the meditation symposia. We will move on to the keynote address by a very well-known and most distinguished scientist and a visionary, Dr. W. Selvamurthy. It is my privilege to share with you the very exciting bio sketch of Dr. Selvamurthy. Dr. Selvamurthy is presently working with Amity University as President, Amity Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation, and the Chancellor, Amity University, Chhattisgarh. He joined Amity University after serving DRDO, Government of India, for 40 years and retired from DRDO as Distinguished Scientist and Chief Controller, Research and Development, especially in the area of life sciences and international cooperation. Dr. Selvamurthy was also awarded with DSc degree from various universities for his outstanding contributions in research and development, especially in the area of life sciences. At DRDO, he was involved in the development of health-related and life science-related technologies for the armed forces for keeping the health and efficiency of soldiers, even in the extreme operational environments. This biomedical research immensely benefited the armed forces personnel and gave a lot of spin-off benefits to the society at large. His R&D contributions include development of life support technologies for soldiers, NBC defense technology, nanotechnology, application for defense, applications of yoga for armed forces, military psychology, and others. He was the leader of the first Indo-Soviet expedition to Arctic Circle for polar physiology research. He has been a member of the Indian delegation to World Health Assembly under the chairmanship of Health Minister to speak about the complementary systems of medicine, including yoga. He is presently the member of Scientific Advisory Committee to Cabinet, particularly in the field of life sciences, including health research. He is a member of many high-powered committees of ICMR. He has published more than 250 research papers in journals of repute, including 18 books. In recognition of his significant contribution to biomedical research and development, he has been awarded a number of prestigious research awards, including CSIR National Award for S&T Innovation, presented by Honorable Prime Minister of India, Academic Mirsay Dmitrievov Award. This is from a Russian country for contribution to high altitude medicine from Kyrgyz Republic. Technology Leadership Award by DRDO, and Lifetime Achievement Award from Honorable President of India in the field of clinical and preventive cardiology. Over to Dr. Selvamurthy, and it is our pleasure to invite you, sir, to deliver this important talk on yoga and meditation for holistic health, scientific perspectives. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Bindu Kuti. It's a great pleasure to see you after a very long time on this virtual platform, and also very distinguished the speakers whom I had the opportunity of listening to, Srinivasan, and also Mr. Vinodji, Deshmukhji, and also very distinguished participants who have joined us on this last day before the valedictory, the keynote address. I know that you had a very marathon session and 5 days. Bindu, congratulations for this wonderful arrangements. I have been seeing right from the inaugural session, and it's a great effort. And I'm sure that this will lead to open up new avenues for a positive health by a holistic approach through yoga. So compliments to you and to your team, and also Professor Dr. B.N. Gangadhar, who has been the instrumental architect of this whole YANTRA 2020. So he just superannuated, and we also welcome the new director, NIMHANS, and who is now will be spearheading NIMHANS. Because I have a very close association with NIMHANS for over almost 50 years now, because I came as a student in the sense that I came for a workshop when Dr. Desiraju used to be the chief there in neurophysiology. It was a IBRO workshop on EEG and evoked potential. From then on, I have had a very close association. So this institute, the host institution who are organizing this YANTRA 2020, is very close to my heart. And I'm sure that this is the apex organization in the country for mental health and neuroscience. And this has come a long way, and this best of the NIMHANS is yet to come. So I was also seeing the program, and in the inaugural session, the outline of the whole lectures, starting from B.K. Iyengar Yoga, S. Vyasa, Art of Living, Raja Yoga, Sahaj Yoga. Almost you covered all aspects of yoga. So it was so articulated, so orchestrated, that you brought all the Indian research and development in this particular field, and also those experts who have worked on these yoga from other countries as well. So compliments to you, Bindu. You have been a pivotal role in this particular event. Now, let me share some of my thoughts during this 40 years when I have worked on yoga as well. When I was a DRDO, I was looking at how do we apply yoga for the armed forces, who are models of extreme stress, physical, environmental, emotional, psychological stress to which they undergo. How do we promote positive health among these people? So that was the idea with which I started my research in early 80s. Now I will take you through some of the sojourn of that, what all we have been able to achieve during this period. So I will just take you through a PowerPoint presentation. Can you see, Dr. Bindu? Can you see this?
Yes, sir, we can see that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk to you about yoga and meditation for holistic health. Holistic health is physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. But I'm going to show you some of the scientific perspectives based on the experimental evidences which we have been able to gather over the last 4 decades. And also my own experiential learning, because I have been practicing yoga for more than 40 years. Since I started research, first I learned how yoga needs to be practiced. So in Vishwayatan Yoga Ashram at that time, I learned yoga, and now I still continue. Even today, I have done it in the morning. Almost I spend about 40 minutes, 45 minutes on yoga, asanas, pranayama, and meditation. So I'm going to share with all the viewers here that how I have experienced and how I have experimented to show evidence that yoga has prophylactic, promotive, and curative potentials. So compliments to this great institution, the NIMHANS, who have organized this event, and particularly Bindu, who was very keen that I should join in this particular event. And so when you look at this COVID-19, it has brought in very unprecedented challenges. You know, we lost lives, there was great mobility, economic impact, impact on education. Almost all spheres of life was impacted by this COVID-19. But then it also brought in some of these opportunities, like we are able to connect from various parts of the globe and over the virtual platform, which we learned online education. But then the impact on the mental health is really great, particularly in the children, the aged people, and almost the whole cross section of the society. So then one of the evidences Dr. Basavareddy mentioned to me, that those people who have been practicing yoga, including me, they have been least affected, or they were not affected by this particular thing to the same level which others have been affected. So it is a method by which you can maintain a positive health even in a great challenging environment. As a physiologist, many of you would understand that fight, flight, fright reactions, which are triggered by the stress, which can come from the external environment or from internal environment. So if the organism is not able to cope up with this, then it can land up in the problems and also the chronic health ailments like hypertension, peptic ulcer, diabetes, and also irritable bowel syndrome, insomnia, many list of stress-related disorders. Now, yoga is an ancient Indian wisdom which started in our country and it has gone global and also in a formal way. Otherwise, it was global otherwise. But then our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has taken it through the United Nations Organization, the General Assembly, and now 21st June is declared as the International Day of Yoga, and which during the last 5 years is being celebrated across the globe. So yoga is formally being given the stamp of a system which gives positive health. So just to quote Prime Minister, yoga, to quote, yoga is an invaluable gift of India's ancient tradition. This tradition is 5,000 years old. Even when the civilization was not taking place anywhere, the yoga existed. So this tradition is 5,000 years old. It embodies unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature, a holistic approach to health and well-being. It is not about exercise, but to discover the sense of oneness with yourself, the world, and the nature. So by changing lifestyle and creating consciousness, it can help you help in well-being. Let us work towards adopting an International Day of Yoga. This is unquote. So this was the speech which he made in 2014, based on which United Nations General Assembly declared 21st June as the International Day of Yoga. What is yoga? And you might have discussed right from the inaugural session I have been seeing, but so I don't have to speak about what is yoga, what are the different kinds of yoga. I'll just skip these slides and go straight to the scientific evidences. We had that ancient wisdom, the Vedas, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, yoga, all this we had 5,000 years ago. So the root is the Vedic science. And from there, yoga, meditation, mantra yoga, Ayurveda, everything started from that Vedic knowledge. Now, Patanjali is the one who enunciated the Yoga Sutras. He compiled all the Yoga Sutras. And he says, yoga, he defines yoga as that restrains the thought process and makes the mind serene. So everything is in mind. Because Atma comes with Man, Buddhi, and Sanskar. These are the three facets of the Atma. So here Patanjali says it integrates all the three together and then gives the holistic dimension to the soul. So that is yoga. Patanjali is the father of Yoga Sutras. And India has emerged as the lighthouse for the yogic science. It has become we have a large number of well-established centers, yoga centers. Now yoga university we have. So in this, it has become the lighthouse for the yogic science and art of practicing yoga. So it has gone global. Many centers are connected with this. You will be happy to know that the Government of India, Ministry of Ayush, has started Yoga Certification Board. This is very important initiative which has been taken to put the yoga education, research, therapy on a high scientific pedestal and also on a higher platform, maintaining the quality and standards so that once it goes global, we need to maintain the standards. And that is the purpose of this Yoga Certification Board. And I'm fortunate to be the chairman of the assessment committee for the Yoga Certification Board, where we can actually certify, accreditate organizations, institutions, individuals who are in the field of yoga as an educationalist, trainer, therapist, researcher, which organizations, institutions can also get accreditation, like NAC accreditation, where the Ministry of Ayush has started this yoga accreditation through Yoga Certification Board. So yogic practice, it actually promotes physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. That is the definition of the health. The WHO definition is physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being is health. So the yogic practice, regular yogic practice, leads to this holistic well-being. That is the first point. It doesn't stop there. It takes you to further spiritual evolution, increasing your divinity, reducing your non-divinity, raising your consciousness, and ultimately reaching to salvation. So yogic practice is just not only the well-being of the individual, but ultimately to reach the higher level of consciousness. As you know, there are many sects of yoga, starting from Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, up to Raja Yoga. But in that, I just want to mention one quote which I always enjoy. We are not human beings having spiritual experience, but we are actually spiritual beings having human experience. If you can just imagine, we are actually the spiritual beings who have come to this world to have human experience, that the whole dimension of your health changes. So these Panchakoshas would have been already talked about, your existence at Sthula Sharir, Sukshma Sharir, and Karana Sharir. Even Sthula Sharir exists at the 5 layers: Annamaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh, Manomaya Kosh, Vijnanamaya Kosh, Anandamaya Kosh. This has even physiological rationale. It is just not only philosophical or conceptual, but it has a physiological rationale as well. Now, I am going to now focus what are the prophylactic, promotive, and curative potentials of yoga based on the experimental evidences which our group of researchers in DRDO as well as in Amity University have gathered over decades of research, and also from the literature what is available. I would discuss our own findings that yoga has got a preventive aspect. It will prevent disease. It will promote your potential. It can also cure diseases, and you can even sometimes use it as adjunct therapy for the conventional medical management. So if you name any disease, it falls into any one of the 5 factors. The first one is sedentary living. You know, our life, modern life has become sedentary. Everybody sticks to, even in this online education, online webinars, sitting through in the chair, not moving about. So the lack of exercise can also cause disease. So the first cause is your sedentary living. And then the second part is dichotomy between mind and body. So the lack of exercise, suppose you put a bandage, when you have fracture, bandage on the hand, when you remove after 6 weeks, you will find it's very weak. Same thing, our body system, physiological system, it was evolved to be tough. If you really see our ancestors who were living in jungles, mountains, caves, facing the vagaries of the climate, running away from predatory animals, hunting for the food. So this body was evolved to be that tough. But then with the sedentary living in modern life, it leads to disease, disuse, atrophy, so disease. Then the second factor causing disease is disharmony between mind and body. Like, for example, you had lunch, all of us had lunch. How many of us really focused on the process of eating? Somebody was reading a newspaper or looking at the mobile. So mind was in the mobile or the newspaper or the TV, and food is going in physically. So there's a dichotomy between what mind does and what body does. It can cause disease. Because when I look at the food, the salivation starts. So when you look at that and the flavor, so your saliva secretes, which is relatively alkaline. So the presence of food leads to secretion of acid and also the digestive enzymes. So this alkaline saliva needs to go and neutralize it and facilitate the digestion. But if the mind is not involved, there's no adequate salivary secretion. And the peristaltic movement will not be, of the GI tract will not be proper. So all this dichotomy between mind and body can cause this type of hyperacidity, peptic ulcer, irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, dyspepsia. You just imagine one factor, which is dichotomy between mind and body, disharmony between mind and body can cause disease. The third factor causing disease is stress. Stress can become an etiological or causative factor, or it can become a precipitating factor. If you already have a genetic predisposition or family history, it will precipitate the disease. Or it can aggravate the disease. If you already have a disease, diabetes, for example, the stress will aggravate the degree of severity of the diabetes. So stress can become an etiological factor, precipitating factor, and or aggravating factor. Now, the fourth factor is pollution, because we are exposed to air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, food pollution, electropollution. So all this can cause disease. So the fourth factor causing disease is pollution. Fifth is infection. Like COVID-19 today, we see the virus. We are surrounded by bacteria, fungus, toxins, and also the virus. So this type of infection can cause disease. So leaving away genetically mediated diseases, you can attribute any disease to any one or a group of these 5 factors. Yoga is prophylactic against all the 5 factors. How? Yoga becomes a total physical, physiological, psychological exercise. It tones up all your muscular, skeletal, nervous, and also kriya to remove the toxins, massaging the internal organs like Nauli Kriya. It massages, which doesn't get activated or massaged during the normal physical exercise. It also brings the normal physiological, neural, and endocrine system. So takes care of the first factor, the lack of exercise causing disease. So yoga is a total exercise, takes care of the first factor. Second factor is dichotomy between mind and body. In yoga, the word yoga itself means to yoke, to unite, to join together, to bring harmony between mind and body. That is yoga. And so here, yoga is just not only practicing asanas. So when you are doing even asanas, when you are lifting the hand to do, for example, Surya Namaskar, your whole mind is to be in that process of doing that. So there is a unification of your mind and body in all that what you do. So even if you are just drinking a water, then you should feel that water going inside, enjoy that process. That is yoga. So yoga unites the body and mind together, takes care of the second factor, disharmony between mind and body causing disease. Third is stress. Yoga. Stress management is only 3 steps. Normalize your perception, optimize your reaction, and release the stress as early as possible. This is the only simple way to manage your stress. Normalize your perception. If you think that, we have all come with some karmic account, and also we have certain capacities, capabilities in us. So let us do our karma to our 100% perfection, striving for perfection, giving our 100% of our ability, but leaving the rest of the fruits to let it happen. It's a action reaction. It has to be, if your actions are good, the fruits have to be good. So with that idea, if you function, no more stress. Accept people as they are. Accept situations as they are. Accept whatever happens to you as they are. So if you develop that attitude, normalize your perception, no more reactions of the stress. So all that is in your mind. How do you perceive stress? So that is why yogic practice gives that philosophy of karma philosophy. So normalizes your perception. We have come with the purpose to this world, and we have come with a karmic account, so it will happen what we do now and what we have done earlier. So if you develop such philosophy, it normalizes your perception. So thereby the first step is stress management. Second is optimizes your reaction. Yoga builds your parasympathetic system, the cooling system of the body. Your physiological cooling system gets strengthened, vagal tone, parasympathetic tone. It gets strengthened. So it stabilizes your autonomic equilibrium between sympathetic and parasympathetic, which will go up during stress. But if you have a strong cooling system, parasympathetic tone, it optimizes your reaction. So yoga helps to optimize your reaction to stress. Yoga helps to release the stress quickly back to normal. Even if it has gone up, sympathetic activation, it restores equilibrium back to normal. That is how yoga helps in stress management, normalizes your perception, optimizes your reaction, and releases the stress which has disturbed the autonomic equilibrium. It brings it back to normal quickly. So thereby stress-induced impact on the health is saved, is minimized. The other one is fourth factor is pollution. You cannot live in a BSL-3 facilities or BSL-2 facilities in clean environments, clean room facilities. You have to live in this. But God has given us the detoxification mechanisms in our physiology, like kidney, spleen, reticuloendothelial system, liver. All this can handle pollutants to a very significant way. Yogic practice strengthens your inherent detoxification mechanisms available in our physiology. So we have evidences to show that. So thereby, body is able to handle the pollutants to some level if it enters your system. So it takes care of the fourth factor. Fifth factor is infection. We are surrounded by bacteria, virus, as well as fungus, and yoga strengthens your immunity. We have evidences to show that both cell-mediated immunity as well as humoral immunity, they are strengthened. Thereby, even if some pathogens enters, and they are handled and managed properly by these soldiers who are strengthened with armed effectively. So this is what is yoga is prophylactic. So yoga prevents the disease, and the 5 factors which causes disease is taken care of by regular yogic practice. Yoga is promotive. If you have certain potentials in you, every one of us have a potential. We hardly use 5 to 7% of our mind potential, the physical potentials. So yogic practice even improves your physical performance at submaximal level. So we have done that by physiological experiment on treadmill, bicycle ergometer, measuring the ventilation, oxygen consumption, and lactic acid buildup, anaerobic threshold measurements. So we have shown yogic practice even improves the submaximal level of work performance. And it improves your cognitive abilities, concentration, memory, learning efficiency, eye-hand coordination, dexterity, all this gets improved. So yoga is promotive. It brings you a talent. The Kundalini Shakti awakening happens when you practice yoga. The skill in action, your skill in action goes up. So yoga is promotive. We will show those scientific evidences. Now I'm giving a summary first. And now I'm going to validate that by the scientific evidences we have gathered over a period of time. Now the third aspect is yoga is curative. Yoga is curative, particularly in stress-related disorders, psychosomatic ailments. Yoga can cure disease as well. And I'm going to show evidences related to the diabetes, evidences related to hypertension, and also coronary heart disease. So this is how I'm going to now show the scientific evidences, the prophylactic, promotive, and curative aspects. So what we did, and if you look into literature, besides our own work, if you look into world literature and Indian literature, you'll find there are numerous scientific papers available for yoga beneficial effects of yoga on healing these type of diseases like arthritis, allergy, asthma, IBS, and tension headaches, and menopause-related problems, depression and anxiety, and many more, sleep problems. So there's thousands of papers in many areas which is well evidenced with the controls and with controlled experiments they have done, physiological, biochemical, psychological studies. Now, the benefits of yoga is at 3 levels: the physical, mental, and spiritual plane. Now, let's straight away go to the experiments which we have done. So these are the ones which I have shown, that how yoga helps, what are the beneficial effects. It improves your cardiorespiratory, metabolic functions, psychophysiological functions, environmental stress tolerance, pain threshold, lactate threshold increase. So all this we found. Now, I will take you through some of the experiments. And this is saying that just say Om, which is normally done. It doesn't have any religious connotations. What the Joel Stein says, scientists study it, doctors recommend it, millions of Americans, many of whom don't even own crystals, practice it every day. So this is an American who mentioned, because meditation works. So this is also the perception besides the evidence scientific publication. Now, coming to the experiments which I have done, some of them I'll show you here. We took 2 groups. One group doing physical training, which is the routine schedule of the armed forces. They spend about 1 hour physical training exercise. And in the control experimental group, we gave for the same 1 hour the yoga schedule, which included asanas, some of them are shown here, pranayam, and meditation. Then we measured many parameters: physiological, psychological, biochemical, clinical parameters. In these people, I'm just showing some of them, like EEG and sleep measurements, then respiratory functions, evoke potentials. Then we put them in a cold chamber at 10 degrees without any clothing except shorts. And we measure their thermal tolerance, as well as how does the body adapt to this cold condition. The treadmill, submaximal exercise, and many, many more, including functional MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. So we have done a large number of parameters by which we were able to demonstrate yoga is prophylactic, promotive, and curative. The message which this particular slide gives, the heart rate, systolic blood pressure, respiratory rate, you will find everything going down during the 6 months practice, the basal parameters going down. What does it indicate? The body, all the physiological functions have a range of normalcy. If you take blood pressure, systolic, anywhere between 110 to 140 is normal. Diastolic, anywhere from 70 to 90 is normal. But yogic practice brings all the functions close to the lower side of the normal range. Thereby, if the heart, instead of pumping 75 per minute, if it pumps only 60 per minute, the wear and tear will be much less in that heart. So yoga is conservation. The message in many of the parameters which you have done show that yoga is conservation. It conserves your energy. So your results are better when you need physical or a mental challenge. At that time, the energy reserves are more. So your endurance to cope up with that stress will be much better, whether physical or mental. So yoga brings down all the physiological functions to lower side. So thereby gives a greater buffer for your reactivity to stress, because all these functions are going to rise during stress. But if you are already on the top of the normal range, you are going to shoot up. But whereas if you are here at the bottom of the normal range, you have optimal arousal, thereby minimizing the damage done due to the reaction to stress. So this is what is the message coming from this slide. Similarly, when you go to the next slide, we have shown the sympathetic and parasympathetic, which I mentioned, the heating system, cooling system. Yoga strengthens the cooling system. Thereby, that is why all the functions come to the lower side of the normal range. It also gives better stability for autonomic equilibrium. Even during stress, when it is disturbed, it doesn't allow an exaggerated arousal. It just optimizes your arousal and restores the equilibrium back to normal quickly because of this parasympathetic tone. That is what is shown in this slide by the heart rate variability spectrum, there's a shift of the frequency and the power increases in the lower frequencies, indicating a buildup of parasympathetic tone. Then besides the autonomic nervous system, central nervous system, as indicated by EEG, showed alpha index of EEG goes up. In this particular graph, if you see with 6 months practice, the alpha index goes up between 8 to 13 hertz. The alpha index increases, indicating a mental tranquility in the people who practice yoga as compared to the control group, which is in the dotted lines. Now, this is what is shown. One of the examples I have shown. You see even theta waves also increased in this. If you see 4 to 8 hertz at the third level, that you have alpha, beta, theta, delta. The theta waves also increased at deep levels of practice of yoga and meditation. Then we also looked at the functional MRI in the people who meditate. We did it on Raja Yoga meditation and on the Brahma Kumaris who have practiced for 10-15 years regular, and they have been living the Raja Yoga. And those people indicated the activation of the prefrontal cortex, which is very important for higher nervous functions, decision making, intuitive decision making, extrasensory perception, and such functions are controlled by your prefrontal cortex. That gets activated by the practice of yoga. And also in meditation, it is an alertful, wakeful condition. So that is what is shown in that slide. Your body flexibility increases. We measured by using goniometer, the flexion, extension at neck rotation, shoulder flexion, trunk flexion. We quantitatively measured and showed if you start the yoga, even at the middle age, we took in this particular group after 45 years. So even if you do that, body flexibility improves even in middle-aged men or women. But we did run men in the soldiers. Then in the bicycle ergometer and treadmill, when we did the graded exercise, you show the graph, you see the graph, the pink one on the left side indicates before they were inducted into yoga, what was the profile of the lactic acid buildup during 10 minutes, during the submaximal level of work. But when you see the blue graph, this is 6 months after training in yoga, there is a rightward shift of the curve, indicating that the rate of buildup of lactic acid is much slower in the people who practice yoga. So indicating you can perform the physical exercise for a longer period of time without getting into fatigue. The biochemical profile indicated a relative hypometabolic state. That's what is shown here. I won't go into the details due to paucity of time. This is important. Why? How yogis with minimal clothing. So you see many yogis, they don't wear warm clothing, sweaters and things like that. They just leave, put a simple linen and move around even in Himalayas or even in winters, severe winter in northern part of our country. So how is it possible? So we looked at whether common man like us, if we practice yoga regularly for 6 months, will we also develop some ability to tolerate cold better? So we measured on control group, which is shown in the solid line, and the experimental group in dotted line. You will see during 2 hours of exposure at 10 degrees with only shorts on, the core temperature drops in both the group, but yoga group maintained relatively a higher temperature as compared to the control group. So this could be achieved by two ways, either by heat conservation or by thermogenesis, heat production. So then we looked at the electromyographic patterns as well as the oxygen consumption, which indicated the shivering started much later in yoga group and was of lower magnitude. So this increased maintenance of the higher core temperature was achieved by thermogenesis, not by shivering, but by non-shivering thermogenesis, which is useful for all of us, including soldiers in high altitudes, where they encounter minus 30 degrees, minus 40 degrees in Sach and glacier. So we have introduced yoga in armed forces. Based on all our experiments, yoga has been introduced into armed forces. Now it's being practiced by the soldiers. Then we also found anxiety, depression scores come down with the yoga practice. And also the concentration, vigilance, everything goes up. in the yoga practitioners. Yoga also handles the carbohydrate metabolism better. The glucose tolerance indicates that. And similarly, in hypertensives, everybody claims yoga is good for hypertension. But we actually studied how yoga works in hypertensive patients. So we created a new hypothesis that there is a carotid sinus receptors which respond to phasic variations in blood pressure. That becomes sluggish in hypertensive patients. So when you do yoga, which involves postural tilt, then it reactivates the sluggish baroreflex mechanism, thereby improving bringing the blood pressure back to normal. So yogic practice, which involves the postural tilt, how we validated, we took 40 patients, divided randomly into two groups. The control group was put on a tilt table. Table was tilted 70-degree head up or 35-degree head down. And in the yoga group, we selected asanas which involves a postural tilt. Like for example, Ardhahalasana, Viparita Karni, Sarvangasana. It all involves a head down tilt. Bhujangasana, Dhanurasana, Surya Namaskar, it all involves head up tilt. So we selected asanas which involve postural tilt to reactivate the sluggish baroreflex, which in turn corrected the blood pressure back to normal, and also plasma epinephrine, norepinephrine came down, and also the urinary catecholamine came down. Now the last part of my experiment was on coronary heart disease. This was done along with the Global Hospital Research Center at Mount Abu, and where Dr. Satish Gupta was our primary partner in this. And this was done when I was in DRDO, and Dr. Kalam himself visited Mount Abu at times to see these experiments when he was the scientific advisor to Defense Minister as well as President of India. And the healthy lifestyle, what we did, we took 524 patients who had the coronary artery disease with inclusion criteria, at least 70% blockade in at least one vessel, coronary vessel. Then we divided them into two groups randomly into a control who received conventional medical management. In the experimental group, conventional medical management, along with that, we gave the lifestyle intervention, which included Raj Yoga meditation for stress management, aerobic exercise to take care of the sedentary living, and vegetarian diet, the Sattvic diet, low fiber, high fat, the low fat, high fiber diet we gave. So what we found, I'll just show you the last part of my experiment. This is mental tranquility was established, and lipid profile got corrected, and I'll quickly run through, and also the carbohydrate metabolism was getting corrected. And then we also found the stress hormones like cortisol, catecholamines came down, and which you have seen, and the pleasant hormone, this catecholamines, and also the melatonin and serotonin, endorphin, all these pleasure hormones, they showed an increase. So we established on this, and also melatonin rhythmicity and the amplitude which you see here was also restored in these people. Then the coronary angiogram, you see in the control patients, there was progression of the disease. As you see here, LAD proximal showed 52.58 initially, and with that 2 years of progression of the study, it has become 72.5 in control. There was a progression, whereas in our intervention group, it actually blockade got removed. 78.85% blockade becomes 47.02 after 2 years of lifestyle intervention, including Raj Yoga. And so this is again another patient, 89% blockade become 41%. So we did, and this was seen by three cardiologists. This each one was seen. So we gave the hypothesis. I just skipped this infrared thermograph in some of these conditions. Then the negative emotions show decrease, and positive emotions like hope, happiness, quality of life increases with Raj Yoga. And also Kaya Kalpa Yoga, we did some experiments. So I will leave this slide. Maybe you can see it at the time. I'll just take 2 more minutes, Bindu, and conclude. Now I will go to the Sahaj Yoga. We did on epilepsy for the control and medical management of Sahaj Yoga. Then we also looked into the mechanism. How does it work? We did experiments on Agnihotra, the Mantra Yoga, where it is practiced in the morning and the evening. We did wonderful experiments on this Agnihotra, which I think we have reported in a good journal, and you will see how it works on the heart rate, body temperature, GSR, EEG. what we found, when you recite the Suryaya Swaha, Suryaya Idam Namama, Prajapate Swaha, Prajapate Idam Namama, then in that, during the practice at the sunrise, you will see tremendous cosmic energy coming to the body, which acts like an antenna. Then you will see DC shift when you are measuring EEG at 10 to 200 microvolts, ECG in 1 millivolt. The high energy coming, the body acting like an antenna, it just shifts, the DC shift occurs in these recordings. Then after some time, the stability comes in this EEG, which we have shown, including the alpha preponderance, which has been shown here. Now, also cardiovascular functions show a relaxation after Agnihotra practice. So I will just conclude, go to the last few. Yeah, now the message. We should now, based on the YANTRA 2020, we must recommend to the government, and it should now become very essential to look at the schools and colleges, education institutions. And with the National Education Policy 2020 being discussed, we must put this as a part of our life. If you have to generate the healthy future global citizens, we need to integrate yoga at school and educational, even higher education level. Hospitals, we should use it. There must be, like in NIMHANS, they have already done it. All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi, they are doing it. So all hospitals, there must be traditional systems of medicine, Indian systems of medicine. So Ayush system should be there in all the system. Patient will have an option. Corporates must do this, and so that they will be able to manage the executive stress very effectively. Now the final message is promote and popularize yoga. It's just scientists has a social responsibility as well. This is what Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi in Indian Science Congress 2017 has said. And I'm also fortunate to be the chairman of this committee to formulate the national policy on scientific social responsibility. So we as scientists and academicians have a social responsibility. We must look at the societal needs. So here is a need for yoga to percolate at different levels of the society. So let us promote, popularize, propagate the message of yoga. And I will end with a quoting, one quote from Christie, which I liked. Yoga is such an universal in its principle and so holistically beneficial. It is possible for any person, young or old, religious or agnostic, to embrace and enjoy a practice. So let us create a global movement on yoga and meditation. Meditation is a part of yoga. So let us create that so that we will create a healthy world, a new world order through yoga, where there will be harmony, peace, health, good health for everyone, and also happiness for everybody. So that is the final message I like to give. Let us all create together a happy world. Thank you very much, Bindu, for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your for enlightening us with your words of wisdom and with your vast experience, research experience on yoga. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And over to the administrator. Yeah, it's the time now to felicitate Dr. Selvamurthy. Sir, please accept our token of appreciation, and thank you so much for participating, for being a part of this year.
Thank you, Dr. Bindu, for this great opportunity, and you are doing a noble service to the humanity through your endeavors. God bless you.
The team. Thank you so much.
Madam, can I ask him a question?
No, this keynote is...
Okay, sure.
I can talk to Dr. Rao. Mala Rao, we'll get in touch, and Bindu, you can give my contact. I like to talk to him as well.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bindu, for coordinating such an amazing symposium. And above all, thank you so much for seeing to it that the session was concluded on the right time. So now I would like to request Dr. Shivram Varampalli to felicitate Dr. Bindu Kuti by handing over her a memento of appreciation. I would request Dr. Umesh to kindly collect the memento on behalf of Dr. Bindu.
Madam, this will be you in 10 minutes. Other people. Thank you very much, madam. Very nice. You have brought a wealth of experience together. I cannot imagine a better set of speakers. Dr. Narayanan, Dr. Selvamurthy, wonderful speakers, and Dr. Vinod Deshmukh all the way from the US. Thank you for doing this for us, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again to all the esteemed speakers for this wonderful symposium. Thank you all.